Hello. I'm just doing a little tutorial on the Eevee render that I did the other day of the PacMan display thing. I'm just going to explain how I made that. And it's a different day than when I actually recorded the tutorial because for some reason OBS did not work, I guess. So now I'm just using the photo booth app. And that seems to be working fine. Today I'm doing a little, essentially, explanation of how I made this effect here. Listen in the middle. The PacMan effect right there. So, it involves a few kind of complicated ideas, but not anything too difficult. So, if we just grab these two and Shift H to hide the rest, and go into rendered view. As you can see, as the ball goes through the thing, a yellow PacMan shows up. And actually, let's get the plane back so we don't see the ball. So as the ball goes behind it, you can see the animation go through, and it does. The PacMan does a little mouth movie thing as it goes through. So first thing I did is I followed a Ian Hubert, I think that's how you say his name, tutorial on how to make a light grid. So essentially I just started out with a little icosphere, this one, and I just duplicated it a bunch of times, and I made these two grids, and then I think I went through, if I turn on the root, I went through and I just adjusted the shape of it down here to accommodate so when the ball is coming out the other end, it just looks a little better. So that is how I did the grid itself, and then I just basically made two colors. If you go into edit mode, the dark glow, which you selected, and it's got, I just made the dark glow everything, and deselect that. And then for the platform, if we go back to the root here, I essentially just went in and hand traced the path that I had built already, so that it would line up as the ball went through and displayed the thing. Okay, I did a really terrible job of explaining that. Basically, I would go through and I would highlight each sphere that was in front of the root. By pressing the L key, it selects the linked. And then once I had selected the whole root, I would go over to the material on the panel, the blue material on the panel, and I would click apply, which basically applies the material to everything that you've selected. So that's how I got the little design there. So for how I actually got the PacMan to be there in the first place, if we go back to the ball, as you can see there's an empty in here. So if we hide the ball and show the empty there is just the empty axis is paired to the movement of the ball. However, it's not rotating. And what I found out is actually if you pair an empty to a vector, you see there's a vector just placed in the middle of the ball. You see right in the middle there, if I can see if I can select it. Yeah, right in the middle there is a vector. And I parented the empty to that, and when you parent something to a vector, it doesn't keep the rotation of the object. I think that's because vectors don't rotate in the same way that objects do in Blender, but I'm not entirely sure about that. So basically, parented the empty to the ball, to the vector in the origin of the ball, and that's important. And that is the basis of the effect here. That's basically the building blocks that I built the effect upon. So if we open the file that I created it in, which is this one, switches to rendered view, you can see it. We've got the PacMan here, and he's doing his little thing, and he flips to the side. So right here is just a plane. If we turn on the axes, you can see, actually one sec. You can see that it's just a flat plane on the ground. So all I did to get this circle to appear is, instead of adding an empty, I just used the object coordinates of the plane. So if we switch the object coordinates, you can see it creates a little grid right in the middle. And this point is the center point. So, and then this mapping here, this mapping node is only for the rotation. You see it just rotates by 180 degrees. And because our PacMan is circular, it just looks like it flips to the other side, essentially. So it creates this little grid using the object coordinates, if we go here. And then it uses, basically I created a mask for PacMan. So let's go to a 0 frame. You can see that it's nearly flat. I don't know if it's 100% flat, but basically you go in here and this is what it looks like. It looks a little scary from up here, but I promise it's not. So I started with taking the object coordinates output that comes from here and putting it just directly into this. And from the vector coordinates you can see here, it goes into a multiply node to adjust the size, basically. Then I took a separate XYZ node, because if you stick the XYZ in here and then turns back on, you grab this and you bring it up. Yeah, okay. And then you grab it and bring it up, and then you hit Control A location. You can see it gets smaller the farther you bring it up, and it just disappears if you get it to a certain point. And that's because we are using the length modifier. Let's see if I can draw it here. It takes the length from the center point in the X, Y, and Z space, takes the length from here, and it goes out a bunch of times. And there's some sort of complex math behind it, and I'm not 100% sure on what it is. But basically, it just gives you a circle, essentially. So then I took the length from the X and Y, and not the Z, because the Z would give us something that wouldn't work in the other case, because essentially the ball is here, right? So if we have the length modifier going out, right, and calculating that, but it doesn't reach far enough, because let's say at a certain point the ball is back here on the track, then it's not going to reach the thing, and that's not going to give us the 2D look that we're looking for, because we're not really looking to get an intersection of the ball. We're looking to get the whole ball projected onto the plane. So in order to do that, when using the empty axes, we have to only use the X and the Y output from the object coordinates, because that it doesn't give us the Z, and if you give us the Z, it can mess up the thing. So basically you take the length output and you color dodge and color burn, which is a trick that Erindale teaches in a lot of his tutorials. Basically that just adjusts the fall off and the size. And then you take a color ramp set to constant interpolation, which will give you this harsh line. Because we just want a clean harsh line. And that gives you this part of the mask, which is the circle. So the next part is a little complicated. I'm going to try and see if I can explain it. So first, we're just going to start with the gradient texture. So I figured the gradient texture is going to be a great way for us to get the triangular look, because if you scale, if you scale the gradient texture, you can see it gets, the black area gets wider, like that. Let's go back to 1. And so I figured I can scale it to be just a triangle and then apply the same level of thinking that I did with this to make it a harsh line. So I took that and then I color dodge, color burn, just to adjust it a little bit. And the color burn actually comes important with the animation. So, and then I put the clamp on it, and you can see as the frame changes, it goes wider and smaller. So the only problem with that is if you rotate, get out of this, if you rotate on the Z-axis, it doesn't rotate, it doesn't open up, so it doesn't go like that to this. So if I go back to what it was, let's go back to that. I had to animate the rotation while simultaneously animating the overall rotation of the color burn. So the color burn is how I animated the opening and closing. If you do this, you can see it sort of opens and closes the mouth, but it only opens from that point upwards. So if you go in here and animate the color burn to do exactly that, between I think it was 0 and 0.8 is what I decided, right there, using the same animation that I animated the rotation of the vector mapping, which is essentially like that, they sort of cancel each other out, and it produces this. So that's how you get that. And then you just basically use a mix RGB node with this as the mask to mix the two, and then you put it at the bottom, and you put this at the top, and it essentially is like overall mask, top layer, bottom layer, and that gives you this combined shape. So overall mask, top layer, bottom layer, combined shape, right? So let's go to a 5 frame actually, so we can see it fully open. So you go here. That's not gonna go soon. Go here, right? So this value node is really important because we're going from 0 to 1 on both of these, and it's going to be the driver for animation. So if I just pop in a value node and I type in here #frame, that is going to add a driver that basically takes the frame number and makes it the value of the thing. So that is the basis of how this works. I'm not entirely sure how I got it to this point. I wish I had a more accurate grasp on it, but basically it's a driver. Go to the edit driver, you can see the properties if this makes more sense to you. So, I don't need that. I think I can control space. Here in the driver page, essentially, I'm not really sure how to do it again, but essentially I made it so that one side reflects to the other side, and so it goes up and then down, up and then down, up and then down. And I set it to go from 0 to, I think it's not quite 1, I think it's actually just like slightly over 1. And that's why you see 1.005 here, but that's not really important because it's only going between 0 and 1 in the first place. You just needed to go from 0 to about 1 back to 0. And that gives you this, and it's a constant interpolation. Let's see if I change this curve. If I change this curve to that, you can see that the way the mouth animates just is a little different. So I have to be very flat, so it does this sort of classic back and forth. So that's essentially how the mask is made, and then I just took a black color, or like a really dark color, and a emissive yellow color, and mix shader with the mask that I created as the factor, and that is what drives the emission and the colors. Let's say like put in a plane right there. You can see that it's emissive, right? All right, so I've opened up this file here later to explain how to set up the drivers to do the opening and closing animation for the mouth. So first, let's just delete the driver here. So what you're going to want to do is, in your scene that you're working with, take the value that you want to animate. And let's say in this scene, I just want to have it go up on the z-axis, or whoops, I want to have it go up on the z-axis and then back down, right? Okay. So let's take the z-axis here and say #frame, which is the driver, frame-based driver that needs doing. So currently, if you play this, it just goes up really fast because it goes, each frame, it moves up 1 meter. And that's too fast, so let's do frame divided by 10. Just give us a slow-paced movement there. All right. So next, we are going to right-click this and open the drivers editor. Now I already have a window open down here, but it's going to look something like this. So I open it up like this, and it's going to open up a separate window. And here you're going to see the driver that you just created. See, frame divided by 10. So to get the tooth thing, you're going to go to the modifiers and add modifier. And here's where you can add all sorts of stuff like noise. It can do stuff like that. Flickering lights is, I think, what it's used for a lot. So yeah, but still, what we want to do is not that. We want to add modifier and hit cycles. And now it's just sort of a serrated tooth look. So we go up. As soon as you hit the climax point of that, it just pops straight down afterwards. And that's not what we want. What we want is a smooth up and down process. So here in the before mode, this is just before 0. You get to hit 9 cycles. It doesn't really matter. And then after 0, it's going to be, instead of repeat motion, it's going to be repeat mirrored. So you're repeating the motion, but you're just mirroring it on the other side. So that gives you this smooth up and down there. And do that. So that is essentially how I got the PacMan to animate. That's what the mask does. So if we go back to the dynamic machines template, not here. We look at the mats section. Turn this on. Turn off the root. We don't need it for this. You can see here if you select this. No. The dark and glow, which is, like I said before, all of the ones that the PacMan is going to be on, and it's the one it's the ones that's not the path. Let's go to a good frame here. So essentially, if we go through here, you can see that I had the multiply to make it a lot smaller, and the separate x, y, z. But instead of separating x and y from the z before, we're separating x and z and putting it into the x and the y. So in roundabout terms, what that does is it takes I do it this way. It takes the plane that we were working with like this and rotates it to be like this. So that when the ball, instead of being down here, when the ball is here, the length modifier applies this way. And this way, but it applies this way and basically gets onto the edge, and that's why that's like that. Oops. So yeah, and then I use the same. Oh, that's right. Okay, so the mapping node, all this is just to get it to flip, so that when it hits the wall, it just changes direction instead of being all in one direction in the first place. So it hits the wall, changes direction, comes out, changes direction while it's out here. You know, it's pretty simple. So then down here, I think I just have the color for the background and the emission color. And that is, I guess, how you make a animated PacMan thing. Yeah, and there's also, check out this little bit of detail here, a little glowing PacMan sign. Pretty proud of that. But basically that's how you make the animated PacMan going through the thing. And you'll notice the render looks a little different than the one that I posted, and that is only because I rendered this. I'm currently using the Cycles render engine to render this, and I rendered the other one out in Eevee just because it's faster and I wouldn't have to worry about all sorts of other stuff. Thank you for watching. Let me know if tutorials and stuff like this is something that you would like to see more of in the future. This was fun to make a little tutorial on something that I was proud of. I think I'm planning to make another one for a video I made a while ago. Someone asked how to do it. So maybe that will be coming out soon. I don't know. Yeah, let me know in the comments if this is something that was interesting. Okay, ciao.